are dirty. Uh-huh. Well, paint my toenails and curl my hair. You're back! I'm so excited to see y'all. This is wonderful. Wow, I am so happy that every single one of you are here today. You know what? I think did I only put half my lipstick on? I think I only put half of it on. That's okay. The lipstick can wait because I got a real important story to tell all of you today. And I want to hear in just a second if you guys are ready for it. I'm going to ask you, are you ready? And then I want you guys with a rip-roaring loudest voice you got in you to say, yeah. Okay, here we go. Are you guys ready? That's wonderful. Are you ready, Mochi? Mochi says he's ready. Okay, good. As long as you're ready, too, my little sweetie snake, you, my little Mochi boo. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say your nickname in front of them. Was that embarrassing? I'm sorry. Don't forgive me. Okay. Now, here we go. Now, yesterday, my husband got to tell you my favorite part of the story. The love story between Jim and Betty. Jim and Betty got married. And, oh, I know, it is an awe moment. It was so cute. They got married and they love each other. But remember, everything in Shandia, all the houses and buildings, got washed away in the river. Oh, well, what were they supposed to do? Where were they supposed to go? Well, right at this time, get this, an Indian chief invited Jim and Elizabeth, Betty, to come to his village because he wanted his people to hear about Jesus. Oh, well, yappy pappy, isn't that the best thing you ever heard? These people wanted to hear about Jesus. So Betty and Jim said, yeah, we'll go down there. And their friend, Pete Fleming, said, I'll go to Shandia and I'll start rebuilding the houses down there. So they went to a place called Puyapungo. Wow, the names in this jungle are a little crazy. Puyapungo. They went there, but they couldn't just fly there. They couldn't just drive there. They had to get into a canoe and go down the river. Well, the rapids were crazy in that river. They got in and they were going this way and that way and all over the place on these wild rapids going down the river. They were bumping here and bumping there, and they almost flew out at one point and their stuff almost all got lost in the river. But thank the Lord, he got them there safely. And when they got there, the nice Indian chief said, hey, I am going to give you a nice hut to live in. And they said, well, that is so kind of you. So they said, thank you so much. And they went into that hut and they started moving all their stuff in. But guess what fun little creatures were in the hut? Cockroaches. There were tons and tons of cockroaches in this hut. And so they were putting their stuff in, and after that long day, Betty and Jim were tuckered out. And so they decided to go to sleep. When all of a sudden, they would wake up in the middle of the night with cockroaches crawling on them. And they kept having to smack them off of them. Now, do you think that made for a good night's sleep? I don't think so. And I think that if there were cockroaches crawling on me in my sleep, I'd say, I'm out of here. This is a little too much for Cornelia Paducah. But they didn't do that. They said, you know what? Even if we have to deal with cockroaches, we're going to stay here and we are going to tell these people about Jesus. Can you even believe that? That's amazing. They loved God that much, and they loved these people that much that they were even willing to be crawled on by cockroaches in the middle of the night. Now, right away, they started doing Bible services and they started setting up a Christian school for children just like you so that they could teach them the Bible. But the jungle was a dangerous place. Not only did they have to worry about snakes coming up and biting them, and not only did they have to worry about a jaguar coming and ripping them apart, but they had to worry about a little tiny thing that buzzes around and will come and bite you, called a mosquito. And the mosquitoes brought a sickness called malaria. And it's a real serious sickness. And a few weeks after getting to Puya Pungo, Jim said, I've got a real bad headache. And he went to sleep. And then they couldn't wake him up. He got so sick that he just slept and slept and slept in bed. And they could tell that he was getting weaker and weaker. And he had a temperature of 104 degrees, which is real high. I'm sure some of you have had temperatures before, and you know how yucky you feel when you're sick. Well, Jim was real sick, and Betty didn't know what to do. They couldn't take him to the doctor. They couldn't take him to the hospital. She had anti-malaria medicine that she was giving him, but it didn't seem to be working. What was she going to do? She was all by herself in this jungle with the Indians who didn't know what to do either, and they were worried about Jim. And she couldn't get any help anywhere. So you know what Betty did? The best thing that she could do. Betty prayed. She prayed and she prayed and she prayed that God would help Jim to get better. And she said, no matter what you choose to do, God, I trust you. And after 3 weeks of Jim being asleep in bed, he woke up and he was getting better. And so after a while, he was regaining his strength and eating as much food as he could. And before you know it, Jim and Betty were back to work. Now, they had some children that they were teaching in their Bible school, and they were doing Bible studies for any of the adult missionaries that wanted to learn about Jesus. And can you even believe this? They were taking a book of the Bible, the book of Luke in the Bible, and they were taking it from English and translating it into the Quechua Indian language so that they could read it and learn about Jesus themselves. Wow, it was amazing. But the other thing that they really had to work on was building an airstrip. Now, an airstrip is just a big, long area where a plane can come in and land, and then it can go and take off. And you know their friend, Nate Saint, who had that little yellow plane, he was really good at helping all the missionaries. And so they said, well, it's going to be important for us if we have an emergency, like when Jim was really sick, that an airplane can come in and it can go out. It can bring us supplies or it can get us to help if we need it. So they were working on that too. That was hard work. Now back in Shandia, Pete Fleming was building all of the houses again. And Jim and Betty went to go visit him. And by then, their friends Ed McCulley and his wife, they were there too. And they all got together, and Pete was telling them, guess what? The Quechua Indians here, more and more of them are wanting to come to Bible studies. More and more of them are coming up to me and saying, will you please tell us about Jesus? And guess what? Some of them were even becoming Christians. Yappy Pappy, that's the best thing I heard all day. They were becoming Christians and trusting in Jesus. Now, they decided that if so many of the Indians in Shandia wanted to learn about Jesus, they should do a big Bible conference. They would invite a bunch of Indians and they would teach them all at the same time more things from the Bible. Now here we've got Pete, who's right there with the parrot. You see that parrot? They had cool things there in the jungle. Right there, Pete and Jim. Now, Pete Fleming and Jim had been in the jungle with the Quechua Indians the longest, and they had learned their language. Wow, can you believe that they learned a whole different language? And so they were going to teach this Bible conference. But you know what they wanted them to do? They wanted to teach the Indians about Jesus. They were hoping that those people would then become Christians and get saved, and that they could find some of those Indians to teach their other Indian friends about Jesus, so the whole jungle of Ecuador would all know Jesus and would all become Christians. Wouldn't that be just the greatest thing ever, wouldn't it, Mochi? Yeah, don't you agree? Mochi agrees. Now, there were 80 Indians that came to their conference, and some of those Indians, they turned from their sins and they put their trust in Jesus. And then some of them said, we want to get baptized. So they took them down to the river that was right there, and they got right in the river, and they baptized them. This was amazing. Jim and Betty were thinking, this is what we've always wanted to do. We wanted to come here and see these people live their lives for Jesus. And that's exactly what was happening. Now, pretty soon, there was some more exciting news. There was something growing and growing and growing in Betty's tummy. Do you guys know what it was? A baby! Oh, a sweet little baby, precious gift from the Father above. They were having a baby, and Jim and Betty were so excited because they had been they had been praying a whole lot about God giving them children, and God was giving them children. So on February 27th, 1955, Jim and Betty had their first baby, little baby Valerie Elliot. And they knew that Valerie was going to grow up in the jungle. Can you imagine what that would be like, growing up in a jungle, living in a hut with cockroaches? That would be a crazy way to live. But they were so excited to be parents. Now, they decided to stay in Shandia and help rebuild everything with Pete Fleming, because everything got washed away into the river when they had that huge flood. And guess what? Guess who came to visit? Jim's dad. Jim hadn't seen his dad for a long time. Would it make you so sad if you didn't see your mom and dad for a really, really long time? Jim was so excited to see his dad, and his dad came down to help them rebuild all of these buildings and to help build a house for Jim and Betty down there. Now, this was hard work. Was it nice and cool and breezy in the jungle? No. Was it hot? Yes, it was real hot. And do you think that they had to worry about all them critters like snakes? Yeah, they had to worry about that. So they had to be, and those mosquitoes, they had to be concerned with all of those things, and they had to work real, real hard. And while they were rebuilding, they were also teaching the Indians straight from the Bible, the Bible. Yes, that's the book for me. They were teaching them from the Bible, and it was so good because 4 more. 4 more! Can you guys show me 4? Show me 4 with your fingers. Good job. 4 more Indians became Christians. Yeah, Peppy. I love it when people turn from their sins and put their trust in Jesus. Now, they were all going to spread out through the jungle, they decided. The Elliots would stay in Shandia, and Pete Fleming and his wife Olive were going to go to Puyapungo and stay there. And then the McCaulleys were going to go to a new place called Arahuno. And then they had the Saints with the yellow plane that were in a place called Shelmira. And they said, we've got a great team here. We've got people all over. We're all working together to tell these people about Jesus. Well, one day, Nate Saint and Ed McCauley went up in Nate's yellow plane, and they were flying over the jungle, do-do-do-do, until all of a sudden they said, wait a minute, what's that down there? What is that down there? So they turned around, and they brought the plane down lower, and they got closer, and they said, it's an Auca Indian village. Now, if you guys remember, the Auca Indians were real scary. They didn't like outsiders coming to their village. And if anybody did, they would kill them. Well, they found where these Auca Indians were living. So they came back, they flew all the way back, and they said, guess what? We found out where the Auca Indians are. And everybody said, no way. And they told them, you know, who's going to tell the Auca Indians about Jesus? I don't know. Who's going to go to the people that might kill them to tell them about God and the Bible? Nobody had ever gone to tell the Auca Indians about Jesus because they were so scary. So they started to pray. All of those families, they started to pray and to pray. And they said, God, if you want us to go to the Auca Indians, help us to do it. Now, right around that time, there was another problem with the Auca Indians. They came out of their village and they attacked some Quechua Indians. And all of those Quechua Indians died from the attack. And the families were reminded, and Jim and Betty knew these were real dangerous people. But even dangerous people need to hear about Jesus. So should they be the ones? Are they too scared to go? What would they do? And I'll tell you what they're going to do. You guys are going to find out tomorrow from my husband, Mr. Paducah. He's going to tell you the next part of the story and tell you whether or not Jim and Betty and all of their missionary friends were going to go and try and tell the Auca Indians about Jesus.